Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining another episode of the Educational Leadership Podcast. We have another very special guest. Before we introduce our guest, we want to give a shout out to our co-host, Corinne French.
Hello, can't wait to get started today. I now just learned we have a mutual connection with our guest today, so can't wait to get started.
Yes, you know what they say, great people surround themselves around other great people, and it seems to be the case in this situation. Before we introduce our guest, we also want to give a shout out to our sponsor, Ideal Impact. Ideal Impact's giving hundreds of millions of dollars to public education around the great state of Texas. Nearly 20% of the districts in Texas are getting funding from Ideal Impact. It's unrestricted funds, doesn't involve the government, doesn't involve taxpayers, and it's recurring revenue that happens every year. So if your district needs additional funding for higher teacher salaries or whatever it may be, reach out to Ideal Impact. Okay, here we go. Today's interview, we have Superintendent Colbert from Harris County Department of Education. Superintendent Colbert, thank you for joining us today.
Good morning, Gary. Corinne, good to be here. I'm happy to be a guest on your show today.
Awesome. We're super excited as well. And just for those listening in, if you can, share a little bit about your background, how you got to where you are today. Where'd you start and how'd you got here?
Well, I'm actually originally from the East Coast, and back in 1989, 50 pounds ago, I ran track for the University of Texas. And so it was really being influenced by some super positive public educators who saved my life that motivated me to become an educator. So I was a special ed teacher in Pflugerville ISD, actually, which is a suburb north of Austin. Went on to become an assistant principal at Conley High School in Pflugerville, and then eventually became a high school principal in Dallas ISD, where I did that for 3 years. And then I went out of state. I went to Chattanooga, Tennessee. I made up my mind that I wanted to be a superintendent. So I went to learn under a great superintendent, Dr. Jim Scales, Superintendent Emeritus, who had been the Deputy Superintendent of Dallas. Prior to that, he had been the Superintendent of College Station. So I was the assistant superintendent in Chattanooga, Tennessee, which was actually a large district for Tennessee, 42,000 students, 16 high schools, 76 schools. And I did that for about 3 years. And my wife hated living outside the state of Texas. So I learned a valuable lesson: never take a Texas woman from the state of Texas. Right on that. He complained about the Mexican food and the barbecue, and we couldn't find brisket anywhere. So, So I ultimately became a superintendent at West Orange Cove CISD, which is a school district outside of Beaumont, right before you get to Louisiana off the 10. Small school district, about 2,500 students. Did that for 4.5 years, loved it, fantastic school district, good board, great people, incredible kids. And then ultimately was asked to come out to Harris County Department of Education. So I've been here since 2014, going on 9 years. But very interesting. It's weird because I've done urban, suburban, out of state, rural, and county. I've done them all. And now I'm here to stay. This is my last stop, I hope.
Definitely not going back to another state. I love when you said that you don't take a Texas woman to another state. I'm from the Northeast and moved here. I guess Texans say, like, as soon as you can, you figure this out, you get here. But I don't think I ever want to live anywhere else either. Texas is the best. So
I love Texas. And yes. I've lived in Virginia, I've lived in Tennessee, I've lived in Georgia, and I've lived in the different parts of Texas. And really, not only do I like Texas, but I really like Houston.
Yeah. Houston is a special place. Corinne, she's not from Houston, but hey, one of these days, maybe you'll make it out to this great city here.
Definitely have enough friends. If I'm looking for my next job, I have enough friends. I think I can maybe head to H-Town. I love that you said saved your life. I don't want to press deep into personal things, but what do you mean by that?
So I'm actually a former special ed student. And a former knucklehead. I was what we call a reluctant learner, and got into a fair bit of trouble throughout elementary, middle school, not so much high school, but it was just by chance that I ended up running track. I was always extremely athletic as a kid, Every school I went to, I would break all the records for the Presidential Fitness Award records and stuff like that. But I couldn't catch a football and couldn't shoot a basketball. I was just fast and I could jump. And it was for a caring educator who decided to drag me and said, "You're going to run track." And it's just I have a very unique story. I've been fortunate and blessed with angels in my life, and people who've taken the time to show some interest, who inspired me, and people I think about daily and aspire to be like. So, people always say, "How did education fail you?" Because I had a significant reading and writing disability. And I tell them education didn't fail me. It saved my life. When I entered UT, I was probably at a 6th or a 7th grade reading level. And my first semester at UT, I got 3 Fs, a D, and a C. I had a 0.7 GPA. Yes, I'm saying this publicly.
Yeah, thank you.
But at UT, all the freshman athletes are assigned a mentor. And the mentor I had didn't do much for me. So the athletic department gave me a lady, my second angel I've met in my life. Her name was Joanne Calhoun. And she was a teacher from Vermont whose husband was a mechanical engineer. And he was assigned to Austin on a special project with him. So she decided to come with him because she wanted to finish her dissertation. And her dissertation was on reading disability. So I became her dissertation. And so she worked with me and diagnosed me and was like, she was like, "You're a poster child for special ed. You have a very high IQ, but very low achievement level." I was probably at a 6th grade reading level. And ultimately, because of the work that she poured into me and her faith in me, I ultimately ended up making the honor roll 8 times in a row. Was a distinguished graduate from UT and got a couple of academic scholarships while there too. So
as a mom of athletes, as a higher ed professional, and also a student, I thank you for that vulnerability and honesty. My parents sent me some of my report cards from high school, and I saw so many C's, and I don't remember me getting that many C's. I think grades are one form of measurement. For sure, we need them, and I appreciate the fact that we can say this person has this reading level, and this is where we want to get them to. But for someone to come along and love you through that, not everyone has that opportunity. I think we give up on people. And certainly by the time you're that age, you're like,
But the student bears some responsibility in there too. I mean, there were several athletes in the exact same situation I was, not as deep GPA wise. And Joanne was their mentor. And she gave them the same level of attention that she gave me. They just weren't as receptive to it. And they ultimately did not graduate. And so, I just remember telling the coach who, after I'd flunked out and I had to apply to get back into the university and get put on what we call SCO-PRO, scholastic probation, he said, "Man, James, you really fooled us." And I was like, "Wow." And he was like, "Yeah, we thought you were smarter than this." And I was like, "I'm sorry to disappoint you, Coach." But at the end of the day, he was like, "I think you can do this. You can pull your way out." And Joanne was the first person to convince me and make me believe that I was actually smart. She said, "Your Peabody IQ is in the 89th percentile, but your reading comprehension is in the 9th percentile." And she's like, "Your reasoning skills are off the chain." So she's like, this explains how you got by the SAT. And I believed her. And I was like, "Wow, I'm actually smart." She was like, "Yes, you're very, very smart." And so it's that seeing the potential in any child and convincing them of their potential helps them actualize it. And that's why I'm in education today.
Curious about that. So that's really interesting. So you take somebody that's highly intelligent, but in K through 12, there were some challenges, like some learning challenges. Through your experience in public ed now, like over the years, have you identified any like disconnects in kind of, I don't know if you want to call it like, tactics in the classroom, or maybe it's the size of the classroom, or the approach?
I think, Gary, that's a great question. I think the most common thing I've seen, and I've done thousands of classroom observations, We have a lot of really, really talented, smart educators who aren't very engaging. And so I'm big into teachers need to create a captivated audience and then deliver the goods. But I've seen teachers who are brilliant in subject matter and know content, but they don't know how to get the students engaged in the educational process. So they're basically just talking to themselves. And so there's no learning happening there. And then I've seen teachers who are incredibly charismatic and funny, and kids love coming to that person's class. And I sit there and listen to them explain things wrong. So that doesn't work either. You need people who actually know content, but also know how to captivate students to get them involved in the educational process. And I've seen that in every school district I worked in, poor, middle class, out of state. It's been a consistent thing I've seen.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. So, I follow different thought leaders and different subjects and that sort of thing. And there's one person that I was listening to, and they were talking about the education of their children. And it's interesting, they were really focused on some of the things you mentioned, like body language, how they present themselves, how they take care of themselves, both health wise and that's right. Because when you surround yourself around people, right, you become more like them in different ways. And so they were very focused on, okay, who is this person as an individual versus, what's the content that they can provide. So that's interesting. From a development standpoint for teachers in the classroom, is that something that's focused on much as far as like outside of like your knowledge base, these areas you're going to influence, kids in a positive or negative way, depending on, the situation. Is there much focus around that, or?
I'd say so. And the interesting thing, I think it comes in different tiers. Most all of my experience really has been at the secondary level, at the high school level. But once I got into central office and I had to supervise elementary schools and middle schools, the level of engagement that we see in our elementary teachers and really developing the whole child is far more intense than you would see at the high school level. High school teachers tend to be a little bit more hardened. The bell rings, they get you out, another group comes in, it's just rinse and repeat, 4 to 6 times a day. Whereas the elementary teacher gets to know the parents, because parents are very much involved in the elementary child's life, not so much at the secondary life. So I think you see it then, but teachers go through burnout factors too. I mean, one kid can wear you down. Like you got a tough kid, and that kid's in your class all year. You're dreading third period because Knuckles is coming to third period. It's going to make it difficult. And there have been times when, even as a principal, I've gone in classrooms to do observations, and I'm sitting in that classroom at the beginning of the year thinking, how in the world did this teacher get 4 really challenging kids in one class? And I would get up and leave and go straight to the counselor's office and say, we need to break that up. I mean, that's not fair to any human to have those 4 kids in one class, and it's not fair to the other kids in the class too, because she's going to be dealing with discipline. He or she's going to be dealing with discipline the entire time. So there's other elements to your point besides just academics, and when we're talking about developing the whole child.
Yeah, I like how you mentioned someone can have strong content, but then not the best engagement levels. I think we have to be, as educators or leaders in any space, have to be continuously improving and recording ourselves. I mean, I go back and listen to the podcast just to see, I think there's an element of reflection that might be, I don't know that we get enough time to leaders to go back and reflect on their work and critically review it. And I think teachers probably have even less time than most professionals. And that part makes me sad. I think in small districts, it's really hard for the teachers to have a lot of reflection time because they're pulled in so many different areas. That's from my perspective. I was learning about PLCs and all these things that Dallas ISD gets to do in some of my classes. I was listening to what they're doing. I'm thinking, I don't think the teachers in my district have. It's not that they don't have strong PLCs and they don't, but the time to do some of them, because they're going to be on lunch duty, and they're going to be helping, they're the cheer coach, or there's something else. And so they're pulled in so many different directions. And I wonder if you can, from your perspective, do you see that difference? Do larger districts allow more time or have it built in and more intentional so the teachers can have more reflection? Or what do you, and what can we do about that?
Well, Corinne, I think part of that is an illusion. So
Okay.
you gotta really, I think you made a profound statement that I agree with 100%. But I think that perspective looks different between a veteran teacher and a rookie teacher. And let's define rookie as in your first 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
I mean, those are the toughest for a teacher. You know, you're being just smothered by grading, and then you're going home and you're creating lesson plans all night. You probably have to submit those at the beginning of the week. You're stressed, you need to eat, you got a family, all of those things. And then what you see with veteran teachers is they have a file cabinet filled with lessons that if they ever get behind, you know, they just dig through the file cabinet and says, all right, y'all are doing a 2-week project while they catch up or something like that. But they're also more seasoned and able to manage and control the learning environment more,
Mhm.
and they are more regimented. This is why teachers don't like getting new topics to teach, because they may not have any content in their file cabinet for that.
I
They don't
love
like
it.
their classroom being moved. They don't want to have to, they want to be left alone because they know what that is. And so I just think there's a huge difference between our younger teachers learning how to teach and learning the profession versus someone who's been in the profession for 15 years, who's
Mhm.
can easily coach and do, you know, be a club sponsor or something like that. It's no
Mhm.
problem for them.
Mhm.
Do you sometimes see kind of the opposite of that as well, where like you got a new teacher that comes in that's motivated, highly motivated, and they're just super engaging, and then you may have a teacher that's been doing it for 15 years and they're just kind of going through the motions. Do you kind of see that as well?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. That I mentioned that burnout factor a little bit ago. You see that also in administrators too. Um, it's weird, you know, when I was a principal and I had to fill a vacancy, let's say in the English department, if I had a really young English department, I'm going to look for the best candidate, but I'm also going to lean towards a very veteran applicant who can bring
Mhm.
maturity to that department and leadership. If I have a very senior department, I might look for a younger teacher because I know that department will make a great teacher. And so then I would even be tactical about where to put my rookie teachers at. I would try to put them across the hallway from the department chair, you know,
Mhm.
so they could go just directly across the hallway, get advice. Or if that teacher hears noise or hears a ruckus, they could easily just walk across the hallway and help that teacher. Because I realized we were losing a lot of really good teachers early in their profession because they weren't being padded and protected. They were just kind of thrown in there. But I think the same can be said about veteran teachers who are burnt out. Sometimes you need to pull them aside and say, hey, is there something else you want to get into? You know, you've got that, or I need you to be an instructional coach or something like that to kind of give them a boost and change it up a little bit.
Mhm.
Just for clarity, so you are county superintendent, and some of our listeners may not work in public ed. How's that communication and connection work between county superintendent and some of the other districts in the county?
So Harris County Department of Ed is the last county school district in the entire state of Texas. Back in the day, we've been in existence since 1889. And way back when, there were nothing but county school districts. It wasn't until around 1946, school districts start breaking off from the county school district and becoming independent school districts. That's where the ISD comes from. You go to a lot of states, they don't know what an ISD is. They're public schools or city schools or county schools. And so we operate more as a service center, similar to our regional service centers, but we do most of our work is directly with students. We are very, very large. We have 33 facilities, 900 employees. We still get a tax rate, unlike service centers. So we're able to provide a lot of services to the 25 school districts in Harris County, which is Houston, for services below cost, because we just complement that with the tax rate. But we specialize in special education. I have 160 special ed therapists. We do occupational therapy, music therapy, physical therapy. We do 55% of all the therapy services in the entire Harris County. but we have special schools. We have the largest after-school program in the country. We have 16 Head Start campuses. We have
Wow.
one of the largest adult ed programs in the entire state. We just did a ribbon cutting ceremony for their $19 million building last week. And so we just do a variety of different things. So I'm not over the superintendents or over the school districts. I'm really running a service center, but we're probably 5 times the size of a traditional service center in Texas. We're huge.
Very cool.
I always wondered about that. And I feel like I'm so glad that Gary asked that. This is what I love about our podcast is that I'm in higher ed is my current job. And then I was a trustee for 10 years, but we throw around terms so often that I think it's just, I love it when Gary asks for clarification because I still learn. I know we're probably running short on time and it's always frustrating because I always want more time, but we know our guests like, this window of opportunity is good for them to listen. What's something that you are reading or doing now, learning something new? What's something that you can inspire us to look at or do, or give us another little window into your leadership style?
Well, I'll just tell you that, we're on a mission. Harris County Department of Ed is really on a mission to reshape how alternative education is looked at. And so we're trying new and more interesting techniques to work with some of our reluctant learners and those students that don't get the kind of attention that your national merit scholars get and your kids who are at the top 6%. And so we are doing a really dynamic strategy and trying to uplift all of our facilities. We are trying to be out front and center and articulating the things that we've learned with working with our special needs populations and all of our populations. We have an extremely supportive board, but we're also, trying some new things with just working with some of our reluctant students. So our big project that we're working on right now is we're about to build a horse stable and we're going to do equine therapy. And so one of our latest projects that we just finished and it's been up and going is Fortis Academy, which is a public alcohol and drug recovery high school, and one of 9 public ones in the entire United States. There's only 40 of them altogether in the entire country. But with this school, we built a $180,000 culinary arts kitchen in it, where we're teaching these kids to be chefs. And so we're saving lives, and there's no question we're doing that. We have kids who are begging to come to this school because they want to be sober. And so getting into the realm of sobriety to help public kids who can't afford to go to a private school or treatment, they typically get arrested and go to jail. And our question is, why are we locking up drug addicts when we should be locking up drug dealers? The drug addicts are sick. We need to treat them. So they'll also be incorporated in our equine therapy once we get that up and going. I've been working on that for 2 years, and we're collaborating with our county commissioners who's given us 14 acres of land. One of our county commissioners is also going to contribute $5 million towards the project. And our goal is for our Fortis students at the Recovery High School to be certified trainers with the horses. Our special ed students from our 2 ABS campuses will get the equine therapy with the horses. And then our last school, High Point, where it's like a discretionary expulsion center, we're going to send them there to give them a cultural excursion to show them that the world's not flat. And so we're not trying to make them horse trainers or anything. We're just trying to show them another side to society, and they can decide what they want to do from that point forward. But we like sending kids back better than when they came to us. And that's something we take pride in.
That's amazing. And you got me thinking about something that we can talk about offline a little bit, just some of the amazing things you guys have going on out there. And I know we're running short on time. And I know you're super busy, Mr. Colbert, Superintendent Colbert. And
I got time, so don't worry about my time.
I want us to do a second one. Can we do a part 2 to this? Because you started something that I don't think we need to get back to this if there's a way.
Hey, I'm open to that.
Yes, part 2. We'll get that scheduled, and we'll continue today's interview. And so before we close out, first of all, I want to thank you, Superintendent Colbert, for being on the podcast today. And thank you for Corinne for being an amazing co-host as well. And before we close out, we do want to give a shout out to our sponsor one more time, Ideal Impact, giving hundreds of millions of dollars to public ed around the great state of Texas. If your district needs unrestricted funds, reach out to Ideal Impact. And for those of y'all that have been tuning in, stay tuned for future episodes of the Educational Leadership Podcast.
Thank you.